The sun was still soft that morning when Emily Carter left her house with her white cane tapping lightly against the sidewalk. At 17, she had memorized every sound, every scent, every rhythm of her small suburban neighborhood. The gentle hum of cars on Main Street guided her like a melody she could follow. She didn't need to see to know where she was. The world unfolded through the whispers of motion, through the warmth of light on her face and the feel of the air against her skin. She walked confidently, head high, counting each step to the corner where the bakery's sweet smell marked her halfway point to the bus stop. Emily had been blind since she was 5 after a fever damaged her optic nerves. Her parents had raised her to believe that blindness wasn't the end of her independence, just a different kind of strength. Every morning she walked to school alone, her cane a quiet symbol of self-trust. She liked the feeling of being capable in a world that often underestimated her. But not everyone saw it that way. That morning, 3 boys were hanging near the small park on Maple Avenue, leaning against their bikes, bored and looking for attention. They were seniors, older than Emily, louder too, the kind who always made jokes at someone else's expense. When they spotted her walking, they exchanged smirks. Her white cane caught the sunlight, and one of them, Tyler, nudged his friend. "Look at her," he said under his breath, his tone half amusement, half cruelty. "How's she even walking straight?" The others laughed quietly. Emily heard the faint laughter, but she didn't flinch. She had learned to keep her focus, to let laughter pass like passing traffic. Yet the sound trailed her, footsteps following from behind. "Hey," one of them called, his voice teasing. "You lost? Need help crossing the street?" The tone wasn't kind. She knew kindness. This wasn't it. She stopped near the curb, tapping for the edge where the concrete dipped into the crosswalk. The world had gone quiet except for those footsteps and her cane's click against the pavement. "I'm fine," she said, her voice calm but steady. She wasn't about to let them take away her composure. "Oh, come on," Tyler said, getting closer. "Don't be shy," another voice added. "Bet she can't even tell who's talking." They laughed again. One of them kicked a pebble toward her feet. It skittered against her shoe, and for a moment her jaw tightened. Emily lifted her chin slightly, her hand tightening on the cane. "You done?" she asked quietly. Her tone wasn't weak or afraid. It was firm, the way her father had taught her to speak when she needed to stand her ground. The silence that followed was awkward. They weren't expecting her to talk back. Tyler frowned, but before he could reply, a passing woman called out from across the street, "Hey, leave her alone!" The boys chuckled again, pretending not to hear, and one of them muttered, "Relax, we're just talking." Emily took a slow breath and stepped into the crosswalk as the signal clicked green. Her cane led, steady and precise. She'd done this 100 times. Behind her, the laughter faded for a moment, until one of the boys, out of thoughtless impulse, kicked his bike forward, rolling it toward her path. It hit the edge of her cane with a sharp clatter. The sound made her heart jolt, but her grip stayed firm. She angled her cane, sweeping to locate the obstacle, and when her fingers brushed metal, she stepped back and tilted her head slightly. "You think that's funny?" she said, her voice sharper now. The boy froze. He hadn't expected her to face him so directly. Emily couldn't see his expression, but she could hear his breath shift. That small sign of guilt and confusion mixed. "You think blindness means weakness?" she asked. A few people nearby had stopped to watch. The air felt still, heavy with quiet judgment. The boys exchanged glances, uneasy under the attention. Tyler tried to brush it off. "All right, chill," he muttered, backing up. Emily straightened her shoulders. "You should," she said simply. Then she tapped her cane once and walked forward again, her steps measured and sure. As she reached the opposite curb, her pulse still raced, but not from fear, from control. She had faced worse in her life, the isolation at school, the subtle pity from strangers, the challenge of proving she could live without someone always hovering near. But moments like this, public raw, tested a different kind of courage. When she reached the bus stop bench, she sat down and exhaled slowly. Her hands trembled slightly, not from defeat but release. The murmurs from across the street faded away. A kind voice broke the quiet beside her. "You okay, sweetheart?" It was the woman who had shouted earlier. Emily nodded. "I'm fine." "Thank you for saying something." The woman sat down, her tone gentle. "Some people never learn what respect means." Emily smiled faintly. "They will." Her words were quiet but filled with quiet confidence. She could sense the world moving around her, the engines, the chatter, the smell of fresh bread from the bakery, and she felt grounded again, present in her own rhythm. When the bus arrived, the driver recognized her and said, "Morning, Emily?" "Morning," she replied, stepping up carefully, finding her usual seat near the front. She placed her cane across her lap and leaned back as the city rolled past the window she couldn't see but knew by heart. That moment on the street didn't leave her easily. She replayed the laughter, the tension, the small tremor in her voice when she stood her ground. It wasn't victory she felt, but something more subtle, a quiet realization that she didn't need sight to see people for who they really were. Later that day, when she reached school, her best friend Hannah noticed she was quieter than usual. "Everything okay?" she asked, slipping beside her at the lockers. Emily hesitated. "Yeah, just some kids being stupid on Maple." "Did they hurt you?" "No, I'm fine," Emily said. Then she smiled faintly. "Actually, they looked more scared than I was." Hannah grinned, shaking her head. "That's my girl." But deep down, Emily knew this wouldn't be the last time someone tried to test her boundaries. Still, something inside her had shifted. She had faced mockery not with fear, but with presence. And next time she'd be even stronger. She couldn't see the world around her, but she could feel its pulse, and hers beat stronger than ever. The next morning began the same way it always did for Emily. The soft smell of her mother's coffee drifting from the kitchen, the hum of the radio playing the local news, and the faint morning breeze sneaking through the open window. She moved through the house with easy familiarity, her fingers grazing the walls as she counted each step to the kitchen. Her mother, Margaret, looked up from the counter. "Morning, sweetheart," she said gently. "You slept okay?" "Yeah," Emily replied, finding her usual seat. She knew the exact distance between the chair and the counter, the warmth of the mug when her mother placed it in front of her. "It was just a long day yesterday." Margaret hesitated, glancing toward her. "I heard about something on Maple Avenue. A neighbor mentioned you might have had a run-in with some boys." Emily stilled for a moment. The sound of the spoon clinking against the mug filled the quiet. "Yeah," she said slowly. "They were just being stupid. Nothing happened." Her mother sighed softly. "You shouldn't have to deal with that, Emily. People can be cruel." "I know," Emily said, "but I'm not afraid of them." "I just don't want to make a big deal out of it." Margaret nodded, though her heart clenched. She admired her daughter's strength, but sometimes wished she didn't have to prove it so often. Emily had learned early how to navigate not just the physical world, but the way people treated her differently because of her blindness. It was a lesson no parent wanted their child to learn, but Emily had faced it with quiet dignity. By the time she left for school, the morning sun was warm on her face. The sound of leaves rustling along the sidewalk gave her comfort. She followed her usual route, tapping her cane along the edges of the curb, aware of every car that passed. But something felt different today. When she reached the park, she heard a familiar voice, one of the boys from yesterday. It was quieter this time. "Hey," he said awkwardly. "Can we talk?" Emily stopped, tilting her head slightly toward the direction of the voice. "Which one are you?" "Jason," he said. His tone wasn't mocking now. It was uncertain, almost nervous. "From yesterday. Look, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. We were being idiots." She didn't speak right away. The air carried the sound of kids playing nearby, a dog barking in the distance. "So you kicked your bike at me," she said calmly. Jason exhaled. "Yeah, I know. It was messed up. I don't know why I did it." "Tyler's always trying to make everyone laugh, and I just went along." Emily nodded slowly. "People always go along. That's the problem." He looked down, though she couldn't see it. "You're right," he said. Look, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you." "You didn't," she said simply. Then after a pause, her tone softened. "But thank you for saying that." He didn't know what else to say. He wanted to ask if she was okay, but something about the way she carried herself told him she didn't need anyone's pity. "Do you walk this way every day?" he asked. "Yes," she replied. "And I'm fine on my own." He nodded again, feeling the weight of her words. "All right, I'll see you around." When she heard his footsteps fade away, Emily's chest felt lighter. It wasn't that the apology erased what happened, but it meant something, that maybe people could grow if they were faced with the truth. At school, the rhythm of her day returned. The echo of lockers slamming, the chatter between classes, The distinct scent of chalk and paper in the hallways, all of it grounded her. She used her cane carefully, tracing the edges of walls and doors until she reached homeroom. Hannah met her there, already smiling. "You okay today?" "Better," Emily said. "One of those boys from yesterday apologized." "Seriously?" Hannah's eyebrows shot up. "That's unexpected," Emily shrugged. "Maybe he realized how stupid it was. Or maybe he's just scared of you," Hannah said with a grin. Emily laughed softly. "Maybe both." During lunch, Emily sat at her usual table, listening to the hum of conversations around her. Her friends included her naturally, describing what was happening or reading menus aloud when needed, but they never treated her differently. It was a balance she appreciated, being helped without being pitied. As she was finishing her sandwich, a voice came from behind her. "Hey, Emily?" She recognized it again, Jason. The cafeteria quieted a little as he stepped closer. "Can I sit for a second?" he asked. Hannah frowned but said nothing. Emily nodded. "Sure." Jason sat across from her, his hands fidgeting with the edge of his tray. "I told Tyler what I said to you this morning," he began. He didn't care. "Said I was being dramatic." Emily tilted her head slightly. "Why are you telling me that?" "Because he's wrong," Jason said. "You didn't deserve any of that, and I don't want to be like him." Her expression softened. "Then don't be." He looked down. "You make it sound easy." "It's not," she said, "but it's your choice." There was something about her tone, steady, calm, without judgment, that made him realize she wasn't trying to make him feel guilty. She was just honest. That honesty stayed with him long after he left the table. When classes ended that afternoon, Emily waited by the bus stop again. The late sun warmed her face, and the distant hum of traffic filled her ears. She thought about how strange it felt that someone who mocked her a day ago had come back to apologize. Maybe people weren't all cruel, just thoughtless until they were forced to see. As the bus pulled up, she heard another voice, one she didn't expect. "Tyler's." "Hey," he said quietly. She didn't answer at first. "Look," he continued, "I know Jason talked to you. I didn't tell him to, but I guess I should say sorry too." Emily turned her head slightly toward the sound. "You guess?" he sighed. "No, I am sorry. We were being jerks. I thought it was funny, but it wasn't. You were just walking, and we made it into a show. That's on me." Her grip on the cane eased. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You can be better than that." "I know," he replied. "I'll try." When she boarded the bus, she sat down, feeling an unexpected warmth in her chest. Not pride, but quiet relief. Change didn't always come from anger. It came from standing firm without losing kindness. At home that evening, when her mother asked how her day went, Emily said something she hadn't felt in a while. "It was good," she said with a small smile. "Really good." Margaret smiled back, unaware of how much weight those simple words carried. A week passed since that morning on Maple Avenue, and though Emily rarely thought about it anymore, the quiet shift in her life hadn't gone unnoticed. People at school greeted her more often now. A few who had never spoken to her before started including her in conversations. Even the teachers seemed to hold a subtle admiration when she walked into class with her usual poise. It wasn't that she wanted attention, she just wanted normalcy, but she could feel that something about her presence had changed. Jason had started walking part of the way to school with her, not because she asked, but because he wanted to. He would meet her near the park in the mornings, keeping a respectful distance as she tapped along the sidewalk with her cane. "You don't have to wait for me," she told him one morning, smiling faintly. "I know," he said. "But I kinda want to." "It's better than biking around doing nothing." She chuckled. "Then fine, but I'm not slowing down for you." He grinned at that. "Deal." Their friendship grew quietly, built on a strange kind of understanding that didn't need to be spoken. Jason started asking questions, not the kind that made her feel small, but the kind that showed he genuinely wanted to learn. "How do you know when the light changes at the crosswalk?" He asked once. "The sound," she explained. "There's a soft click when it's time to walk. And I can feel the sun shift when the traffic stops." "That's wild," he said with awe. "It's not magic," she replied, laughing. "Kids just paying attention differently." The way she said it stuck with him. Paying attention differently. It was simple, but it felt like something bigger. At school, rumors about what had happened on Maple Avenue had spread, though Emily didn't know it. Tyler, despite his embarrassment, had told a few people what went down, leaving out his worst behavior but unable to hide how calm and fearless she had been. Word got around fast about the blind girl who stood her ground, who didn't shout, didn't cry, didn't crumble. One afternoon during gym class, Coach Harris decided to run a teamwork activity, a simple obstacle course that required pairs to communicate clearly. The catch was that one partner had to be blindfolded. When Emily's name was called, everyone turned toward her, but Coach smiled reassuringly. "You don't have to sit this one out, Emily. I'll pair you up differently if you want." She lifted her chin. "I can do it like everyone else." The room went silent for a second. Then Hannah volunteered to be her partner. "I'm blindfolding myself," she said quickly. "Seems fair." The others laughed, but not mockingly this time. Coach blew the whistle and the activity began. The gym filled with shouts, laughter, and the sound of sneakers squeaking against the floor. Emily stood at the starting line beside Hannah, giving her calm instructions. "Left 2 steps, good. Now reach forward, there's a cone. Step around it, not over." "Easy for you to say," Hannah muttered, bumping into it. Emily laughed. "Welcome to my world." Across the gym, Jason was watching with quiet admiration. The way Emily moved, her posture, her steady tone, it wasn't just impressive, it was humbling. When Hannah finally reached the finish line, the whole class clapped. Coach Harris nodded approvingly. "That's what real teamwork looks like," he said. Emily smiled. Not for the applause, but because she knew she'd shown something real, what patience and trust could look like when sight wasn't part of it. Later that week, the school counselor asked Emily if she'd speak briefly at an upcoming assembly about accessibility and inclusion. At first she hesitated. "I'm not really a public speaker," she said. The counselor smiled. "You don't have to be. You just have to be yourself." When the day arrived, Emily stood on the stage, cane in hand, in front of hundreds of students. The hum of whispers quieted when she began. Her voice was steady, gentle but strong. "I don't see the world the way you do," she said, "but that doesn't mean I don't see it. I notice the things most people miss, the sound of leaves moving before a storm, the way footsteps tell you who's walking by, how silence changes when someone feels sad. Being blind doesn't make me less capable. It just means I understand the world differently." She paused, letting the quiet settle. "And sometimes," she added softly, "what hurts the most isn't what I can't see, it's when people decide not to see me." The room stayed silent for several seconds, then filled with gentle applause. She smiled faintly, stepping back from the microphone. Somewhere near the front, Jason and Hannah clapped louder than anyone. After the assembly, several students came up to her, thanking her for speaking. One of them, a girl she barely knew named Lila, said quietly, "My brother's deaf." "What you said," it really meant something. Emily touched her hand. "Then maybe you should tell him that he's not alone." That night, as Emily sat on her bed with the soft hum of evening traffic outside, she felt something new, a sense of quiet purpose. What had started as an ordinary walk to school, interrupted by cruelty, had become something bigger than her. It was strange how one moment could ripple outward, changing the shape of so many others. Jason texted her later that night. "You were amazing today." She smiled at the sound of the phone vibrating in her hand and typed back, "Thanks. Guess people finally heard me, huh?" He replied, "Yeah. And maybe they finally saw you too." She set the phone aside, her fingers tracing the smooth handle of her cane. She didn't need sight to feel proud. What she had wasn't about defiance or revenge. It was about being real, being seen for her strength, not her blindness. As the night deepened, she lay back, listening to the soft rhythm of rain starting outside. The world around her was alive in ways she could always sense, even without seeing it. Somewhere she thought about those boys again, not with anger, but with quiet forgiveness. They had mocked her once, but now, in a small way, they had helped her voice be heard. And she knew this was only the beginning. A few weeks later, Emily's life had slipped back into its usual rhythm, but something subtle had changed inside her. The morning walks felt lighter. The voices that once whispered about her now greeted her with warmth. Even Tyler, who had once mocked her on Maple Avenue, nodded when they passed in the hallway. He didn't say much, but the small gesture carried the weight of a quiet apology repeated without words. The assembly had done more than she expected. Students had started talking openly about things that had always gone unspoken. The counselor even organized small discussion groups about kindness and awareness, and she asked Emily if she'd like to help lead one. Emily hesitated at first. She didn't see herself as a leader, but something in her told her it was worth trying. On the first afternoon of the group, only 5 students showed up. They sat in a circle in one of the smaller classrooms, sunlight spilling through the window blinds. The air smelled faintly of dry erase markers and warm dust from the old radiator. Jason was there along with Lila, the girl whose brother was deaf, and a quiet freshman named Noah, who rarely looked up from his notebook. The counselor began softly. "We're here to talk about how we see people who are different and how we can do better. No judgment, just honesty." When it was Emily's turn to speak, she took a breath. "Sometimes it's not the big insults that hurt," she said. "It's the small things. The way people whisper when I walk by or talk to me like I'm fragile. I'm not. I just live differently." Jason nodded beside her. "I used to be that guy," he admitted. "I laughed when people made fun of others. I didn't think it mattered. But it does. It changes the way someone feels about themselves. I didn't get that until I saw what we did to Emily." Noah lifted his eyes for the first time. "People don't realize how much words stick," he said quietly. "I get made fun of too sometimes, because I stutter." His voice trembled slightly on the last word. Emily turned her head toward him. "You speak just fine," she said softly. "It's brave to talk when you're scared someone might laugh." Noah smiled barely, but it was real. Week after week, more students joined the group. It wasn't dramatic or loud. It was quiet change, the kind that grew slowly but deeply. People began opening up about their own insecurities, and Emily listened more than she spoke. Her presence made others comfortable enough to be honest. She didn't preach or teach. She simply embodied what resilience looked like. Outside of school, she started helping out at a local center for visually impaired children. Her mother drove her there on Saturdays, and she worked with younger kids learning to use canes for the first time. The building smelled faintly of disinfectant and crayons, and the sound of tapping canes filled the hall like a rhythm of determination. One morning, a boy named Liam struggled to find his way around the practice room. He was only 9, blind since birth, and his frustration came out in bursts of anger. "It's stupid," he shouted. "I keep hitting the wall." Emily knelt down beside him. "You're not hitting the wall," she said gently. "You're finding it. Every tap tells you where you are. Every sound keeps you safe. That's not failure, it's information." Liam frowned. "But it's hard." "It's supposed to be," she said. "The hardest things teach us how strong we are." He hesitated, then tried again, his cane tapping more carefully this time. When he reached the center of the room without stumbling, he grinned. "I did it." Emily smiled. "You did, and you'll do it again tomorrow." As she watched him, she remembered herself at that age. How scared she had been to move through a world she couldn't see. How her father had stood beside her, saying the same kind of words. Now she was passing them forward. Back at school, her circle of quiet influence grew without her realizing it. Jason became one of the most outspoken advocates in their group, speaking to other students about empathy and respect. Even Tyler showed up once, standing awkwardly in the doorway before sitting in the back row. He didn't say much, but his presence said enough. After one of their meetings, Tyler caught up to her outside. "Hey," he said awkwardly. "I just wanted to say I'm proud of what you're doing." She smiled faintly. "Thanks, that means a lot." He nodded, then looked away. "I'm trying to be better," he said quietly. "You already are," she replied. "The fact that you're trying means you've already started." The words stayed with him long after she walked away. That evening, Emily sat by her window, listening to the steady hum of the world outside. The faint buzz of streetlights, the echo of a dog barking 2 houses away, the distant sound of laughter. The world, though unseen, felt alive and full. She ran her fingers along her cane and thought about how much had changed in such a short time. She had never set out to teach anyone a lesson or start anything bigger than herself. She just wanted to walk to school in peace. Yet through courage, patience, and the choice to stand tall instead of shrinking back, she had become something unexpected, a reminder that strength isn't loud. It's quiet. It's the kind that doesn't demand attention but earns it. When her mother came to check on her before bed, she found Emily sitting cross-legged on her bed, listening to the soft rain beginning to fall again. "Long day?" Margaret asked. Emily nodded. Good one, though. I helped a kid today. He learned how to trust himself. Margaret smiled softly. You have a gift for that. I don't know, Emily said. I just remember how it felt to be scared, and I don't want anyone else to feel that way if I can help it. Her mother leaned down, kissed her forehead and whispered, You make me proud every single day. After she left, Emily pulled her blanket closer and lay back, her mind replaying the sounds of the day, the laughter of kids at the center, the voices in the group, the quiet thank yous from people who once never noticed her at all. She didn't need eyes to see how much brighter the world had become. Part 5 continues next, where Emily's quiet influence spreads beyond her small world, leading to a moment that changes how her entire community sees her and themselves. Part 5. They laughed at a blind teen walking alone, her next move. Silenced, everyone winter arrived quietly in the small town, bringing early sunsets and the crisp sound of leaves crunching beneath boots. The air was cool but clear, carrying the faint scent of chimney smoke. Emily had grown used to the change in temperature, adjusting her routes with calm precision. The crosswalks clicked a little slower now, and she could feel the cold metal of her cane through her gloves. Her life felt full in ways she hadn't expected months ago. Between school, the support group, and the children at the center, her days were rich with purpose. One morning, as she walked her usual route, she heard a familiar voice calling her name. It was Jason, hurrying to catch up, his breath visible in the cold air. You walking alone again? He asked between breaths. Always, she said with a small grin. Habit of mine, he smiled. There's a big story about you going around school again. Apparently someone's writing an article for the local paper. An article? About me? Yeah, Jason said. Mrs. Cole's journalism class is doing a feature on people who make a difference in the community. They picked you. Emily's eyebrows lifted. I didn't make a difference. I just walked to school. Jason shook his head. Oh, you did a lot more than that. She laughed softly, shaking her head. If they want to write something, that's fine. But I don't need to be in a newspaper. Later that week, the journalist, a quiet girl named Ava, approached her after school. She was polite, almost shy. I want to tell your story, she said. Not the way people think of it, but how it really happened. Emily hesitated, but agreed. They sat in the library, surrounded by the faint hum of heating vents and the smell of old books. Ava asked careful questions. How Emily felt that day on Maple Avenue, what she thought about people's reactions, and how her life had changed since then. Emily's answers were simple. People think courage is loud, she said. But sometimes it's just staying calm when everyone else expects you to fall apart. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I just didn't want them to think I was afraid. When the article came out 2 weeks later, it carried the headline, Seeing Strength Differently. It wasn't sensational, it was honest. The story spread around town, reaching more people than she imagined. Parents read it to their children. Teachers discussed it in class. And at the local community center, someone pinned the article to the notice board beside a photo of Emily, helping the younger kids. One Saturday, as she arrived at the center, she heard a familiar laugh. It was Liam, the boy she had helped before, running toward her with his cane tapping excitedly. Miss Emily, you're in the paper. My mom read it to me. Emily smiled warmly. Did she now? Yeah. She said you're famous. She laughed, kneeling to his height. I'm not famous, Liam. I just walked my own path. That's all, Liam grinned. Then I'm going to walk mine too. Her throat tightened a little as she hugged him. That's exactly what you should do. Later that afternoon, while helping him and a few others navigate the obstacle course, she heard the faint shuffle of shoes behind her. It was Tyler, standing in the doorway of the center. His voice was hesitant. Hey, Emily. She turned toward him, smiling slightly. Hi, Tyler. I saw the article, he said quietly. It was really good. I'm glad you're doing all this. You've made a difference. More than you think. Her smile deepened. Thank you, Tyler. That means a lot coming from you. He nodded, his voice low. I think about that day a lot. I wish I could take it back. You already have, she said gently. You changed. That's enough. He looked down, then up again. You really forgive that easily? She nodded. Forgiveness isn't for them. It's for me. I don't need to carry what they did. It's heavy enough for them to carry on their own. He didn't reply, but the look on his face said everything. Something unspoken had lifted between them. Something old and ugly finally released into the quiet air. That evening, when Emily and her mother walked through town together, she could hear how people spoke to her differently now. Shopkeepers greeted her by name. A little girl pointed and whispered to her mother, "That's the brave girl from the story." And though Emily smiled, she didn't feel like a hero. She felt human, someone who had simply kept walking when others might have stopped. At home, she sat by the window again, feeling the warmth from the heater and the gentle brush of winter air slipping through the frame. Her mother sat beside her, handing her a mug of cocoa. "You've changed this town, you know," Margaret said quietly. Emily tilted her head, smiling. "No, the town just started paying attention." Her mother chuckled softly. "You really believe that?" "I do," Emily said. "Sometimes people just need to see what kindness looks like before they remember they have it too." The night outside was calm, with snow starting to fall in slow, soft flakes. Emily listened to it, the delicate hush of the world turning white. Somewhere inside that stillness, she felt the quiet truth of everything she'd lived. The laughter that had once stung, the apologies that had healed, the courage that had grown not from sight, but from heart. And in that peace she understood that her blindness had never limited her vision. She saw the world more clearly than most. Through sound, through touch, through kindness, through courage, through love. She leaned back, her cane resting by her side, and let the sounds of life fill her mind. Every note, every whisper, every heartbeat felt like part of the same melody. One she would keep walking to, wherever her path led next.